Hey everyone, it's Laura. I just wanted to very quickly say just how excited I am to share with you one of my favorite modalities, one of my favorite ways of working with this modality called Tarotherapy. It is such a soul-aligned, beautiful, and very detailed and user-specific way of addressing the obstacles, the archetypes, the blocks, the freedom, the paths that reside in front of us. Now, today I show you very generally, out of confidentiality for my client, this first introduction of tarot therapy. And this is a first session, so it's kind of the big, broad picture view. And as I explained in the video, from the sessions forward, we go off of this basic big picture view, but we begin to get down more into the nitty gritty and the day-to-day as things shift and pivot. And I have to say that as this first session, when this client hopped on to my Zoom screen, she was hunched over. It was as though the joy had just been drained entirely from her face. She looked, felt, and emitted this energy of just feeling lost and feeling stuck and feeling like nothing she had done, nothing she could possibly do was going to help her. And it was such a beautiful transformation, like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. By the time the session was over, and even while we were going through the session, you could see her eyes begin to light up. You could see that she began to sit upright and her shoulders were back, and you could just see that the glow had returned to her face. And the smile that she had as we ended the session emitted so much hope, so much possibility, so much confidence, so much belief in herself that honestly, I don't know how long it had been since she had felt any of those things. So I was just so enlivened and wanted to share a preview because so many had been asking me, what is tarot therapy? How is it different from a reading? And in a lot of ways, it's very difficult to explain without experiencing it. And so I hope that my just little introduction here to my client, her demeanor, how she like physically, energetically, emotionally shifted right before my very eyes, along with my going through how we do that first initial session, gives you an idea of the potency, the power, the transformation that is contained within the tarot therapy program, so that if you feel called, if you feel like this is something that can benefit you, that you give it a chance, because it really can provide you with not just a roadmap on how you can change or where you're being called to change, but it can give you back that hope. It can give you back that confidence, that faith, and that belief that, yeah, life can get a hell of a lot better. And I don't have to hold on to the many times I fell down, because here I am getting back up, and I feel like for the first time, I'm going to not just stay upright, but I'm going to rise even taller. So enjoy the video. I love each and every one of you, and I hope to hear from you soon. And of course, if you have any questions ever, just reach out. You can email me at laura@intuitivealchemy.co, or you're more than welcome to head to intuitivealchemy.co, click on that contact button, and drop me a message. Love you all. Hey everyone, this is Laura, and I have had a ton of questions about one of the latest offerings on the site called Tarotherapy. And a lot of them sort of circle around the idea of, well, isn't this just like a regular tarot reading? Isn't this just, you know, getting a little insight from the cards and you telling me what to do? And the answer to that is no. If you've ever received a reading from me, then you know that I am offering predictions. I am receiving insight from my guides around your questions. It's very question focused. You give me a question, I shuffle and focus the cards. I combine my intuitive psychic abilities, my channeling abilities, and the cards to find the insight, to read the energy, to tap into what my teams are saying, to offer you, steps forward and insight for the many paths that are before you. With tarot therapy, it's a lot different. So this is an example of a reading that I just got doing. Oh, I say reading because every time my cards are out, I feel like it's a reading. A tarot therapy session that I just got done doing with a client. And with their permission, minus any specifics, I am able to share this with you to give you an example of the difference. So right here, what we have is where my client currently is at. She's been in this position, this archetype of the hanged man. She's been kind of waiting, observing, but what was coming through is that it was more of the shadow aspect of the hangman, which are those times in life where we have convinced ourselves that we need to stay where we are at. We need to not make any moves because we haven't gotten that crystal clear yes or no. We haven't gotten that, extremely specific neon sign that says, yep, if you go in this direction, all is going to be a-okay. And the reason she hasn't is because she's so fearful of the transition. She's so afraid of the unknown, which is the Six of Swords. She's so worried about what may come, what may transpire, that ultimately she's resisting any movement. And the resistance is actually creating sort of this self-imposed psychological form of anxiety. Now, all forms are psychological in nature to a degree. A lot of them can be more chemical in their, origin, I suppose I could say again. But the Nine of Swords is where, yeah, there could be something that we're anxious about. Anytime we're feeling the pressure to move into a transition, we can feel a little anxiety. We humans, most of us by and large, tend to like things to remain the same. But she was kind of taking it to a whole new level by going into this space of basically, taking what her anxieties were, what her fears were, and working them up to such a degree that she couldn't sleep. She, was not eating because her stomach was in knots. She had worked any anxieties that were naturally a part of the transition. She had worked them up to such degree that they were like these large looming monsters that she dared not get close to. And the archetype that she was actually being called to move into was that of the emperor, was letting herself be seen, was letting herself, really shine, putting herself completely out there, not being concerned about whether or not, people are going to like what she does, or they're going to immediately go for it. The emperor in tarot therapy is more about recognizing the ways in which we have to take the lead in our own lives. We have to be willing to shine our brightest. We have to be willing to stand as tall as we possibly can. And that often requires a certain level of visibility, which can often make us feel vulnerable. It can make us feel quite nerve-wracking. Now, the gap to get from the hanged man to the emperor is the tower. She's got to break down the thought forms that are represented over here. She has to be willing to let go of the thought forms and to break down the foundation of what has been so she can make the transition, so she can realize that in reality, she's not that stuck. She could wiggle around, she could move a little bit, she could take a different perspective, and she could see that there are many, many, many clear paths before her that she could take, instead of just wallowing on the fears, the anxieties, the things that she might potentially lose or that would be taken away from her or that could go wrong. So she really, in order to embody this emperor archetype, she has to get into this mode of the temper or the tower. She has to be willing to let crumble anything that does not serve her, to release, to shake off, so that she can embody the energy of the emperor. And she can embody ultimately the plan that she's being called to make. When she comes into this tower moment, though tower moments can sometimes be unsettling because we're experiencing a massive change, we are radicalizing the way we think, how we believe, what we perceive, and that naturally shakes up the foundation of our lives. But in this case, it also showed that it would help her access the energy of the chariot. And this is confidence, this is determination, this is motivation. It is going, you know what? I can make this transition. And I can start by making a plan. I can start by knowing I'm on the right path. I'm standing here and I'm looking out into this vista and I see where I want to be. Now I have to create a plan and do the doing. And the Nine of Wands, yeah, you can tell this person is a little bit beat up. They're a little bit, clearly leaning on, the wand that's before them. And it's a message that when we're in a generative, creative space, when we are making rather large shifts and changes in our lives, absolutely, we're going to feel tired. We're going to feel burnt out because we can't always just cancel everything on our plate and go have a spa day, And so it's about nurturing through the busyness. It's about finding those pockets where we can take 5, 10, 15 minutes to ourselves to just replenish our resources, to replenish our energy, our reserves, so that we can get back into the energy of the Knight of Wands. Again, under the emperor archetype that she's being called into. And the Knight of Wands is what's going to ultimately provide her with the passion, the motivation, the fire that is going to help her launch into action to put this plan, whatever it may be, and she and I went into the specifics of that, which is something we do in tarot therapy. We kind of created a plan, we had our big vision for this particular session. And then, we broke that down into smaller, easier, more accessible steps and created, that accountability. And that is what allows her to embody the Knight of Wands energy. We start small, we start with the pragmatic, and then we move our way up that ladder. And before we know it, something that seemed so far away from us, so out of our reach is,
now it's right there. It's right next to us. We just have to take the step into it. And that's the Knight of Wands energy. That's that energy that's going to take her onwards, and that's going to lead her ultimately to this place of success. You can see that the Six of Wands, this character is coming into what appears to be like a village. The chest is kind of puffed out a little bit with some pride. There's a celebration, a wreath around this individual's head. There's a wreath that seemingly has been thrown upon the wand that he carries. There are others that are in the foreground, the background, who clearly, seem to be gathering because this person's arrival. So it's all about success. It's all about accomplishment. It's all about having people on the external, congratulating us, recognizing and witnessing our hard work, celebrating our hard work, celebrating our achievement. But equally so, it is that internal sense, again, noticing that their chest is kind of puffed out, and they're clearly sitting upright, very sure of themselves, very, rightfully so confident. And that's ultimately this energy of, feeling good on the inside, because we can do things that give us, accolade and celebration and validation on the outside. And that feels great, don't get me wrong. But if that is what we rely upon, if that's what we depend upon, then it's a very fleeting feeling. And it doesn't help us to embody, whatever we need to for the next grand adventure, whatever, we may decide to move forward and into next. So we have to make sure that not only are we, celebrating and receiving the reception and the accolade of those outside of us, we have to make sure we're harnessing and we're cultivating that within, so that the next time when we're being called to make change or to do something different or to shift something, we confidently can do so. We know it's within the realm of doing. We know that we're ready for it because we have it within us. Even though the other people may have all gone back to their homes and their regular every day-to-day life and aren't necessarily celebrating us on the daily, it doesn't matter, because we first harness that confidence, that surety, that empowerment, that knowing that we're capable of this and much, much more, and on the inside. So even though they're gone, they can't take away that which we've cultivated within. And ultimately, at least for my client, by following the path of allowing the transition, by getting rid of all that does not serve her, and we went into all of that and how it is that she can do that. And again, like I said, I'm not sharing specifics, but each card, it's not just, well, this is what the card means. It is, how do I radicalize my beliefs and my thoughts? How do I shake free of any relationships or connections or thought forms or, behaviors that have kept me in this archetype of the Hanged Man, that have kept me waiting and kept me in this space of feeling fearful? Why am I feeling fearful? What's the story that I'm telling myself about this transition? What is the story, the beliefs, and the now narrative that I am creating around this transition, should I make it, that are inciting so much of this energy of anxiety, even more so than what's really called for? What is it that's making me feel stuck, and how can I let it go? How can I remove it from my energy, from my body, from my, the training and conditioning of my mind? How can I be less focused on what it is that I, think could go wrong, and pay more attention to the ways in which my life could be replenished, refilled, and made better on account of embodying the Emperor's energy? And then how do I embody the Emperor's energy? How do I, step into that energy? How do I step into the Knight of Wands? What is the plan I've got to make? If I've got the vision and I know what I'd like to do, but that seems so hard. Well, let's work together and create a plan. Let's work together and bring that plan down to its smallest pieces so that we can then have steps that seem completely easy and accessible for us to begin to make. And that makes moving into the Emperor, the Chariot, and the Knight of Wands energy really, a foregone conclusion. We feel much more confident when we're looking directly at things we can begin doing in this very moment to get to where we want to be, instead of looking up like we're looking up at the top of a skyscraper from the very, very bottom floor and wondering how the hell we're going to get up there. And we gave examples on how to tackle and work with in a holistic, nurturing manner the anxieties that are keeping her up at night and stopping her from eating. We talked about ways that she can nurture through the busy, how she can even change the narrative that she's telling herself about how hard it is, and instead rephrasing it to be a challenge, because we've all been through challenges, but we've made it through them because we're still here. I'm still here recording this for you. You're still here listening to me go on and on. So we know that it's possible. And then we talked about the many ways that she can harness this energy so that she is not reliant upon what is external to her to such a degree that she doesn't cultivate it within, and therefore experience the drop in confidence and surety and knowing that happens when we rely on what's outside of us, because what's outside of us eventually is going to go away. One way or the other, it's going to leave our experience. But ultimately, instead of being focused on what she feels she's lacking and being so focused on what she fears could go wrong with this transition, by making this transition, she embodies the energy of the Nine of Pentacles, where now she not only has created something that is strong, it has a very abundant foundation, it has a very warm, inviting, just very prosperous energy, a very connected energy, but it also can be where we're like, well, I want to keep the momentum going, so I'm just going to keep grinding away. I'm going to keep going, keep doing. And the message of this card is, you've created something strong, beautiful, that has brought a lot of abundance and prosperity, riches and wealth in all of their various forms into your life. But you have to still take a little pause to stop and smell the roses, to enjoy a little bit of what it is you've built, because that is also a means through which you're replenishing your reserves. That is another way through which you are, you're showing gratitude to yourself, and you're showing gratitude for what entered your life when you interact with it. Because ultimately, if we just keep grinding away, not only do we burn out, but we're also not appreciating and showing gratitude for ourselves and the things that we've now drawn towards us through the work that we've done inwardly and outwardly. And therefore, that will place us out of right action. So she is going to, yes, pause, stop and smell the roses, enjoy a little bit of what is now available to her on account of the transition and the archetypes that she embodied, and the work both within herself and both externally in her day-to-day, that she did to bring all the amazing things that are now in her life, or that are coming or about to come into her life. And this is replenishing her. It's showing gratitude to herself. It's showing gratitude for the things in her life, placing her in right action. And it's also replenishing her so that when she does want to go back into creative, generative mode, she's got her reserves full. She's ready to do it. She's ready to maybe go through this cycle again, or perhaps when we have our next session or next 2 or 3 sessions, she'll be ready to embody an entirely new set of archetypes represented at the top here. So this gives you a little bit of an example of what a tarot therapy session is like. Like I said, every card is read both from a broad view, but also a very, very personal view. So we look at it and we provide you with counseling with these, these tips, these tools that you can put into action to work with the energy or to get out of the energy or to shift this or pivot that, so that you, when you are done with our session, you know exactly what your next steps are supposed to be between now and our next session. And then in the next session, we look it up again and we see, okay, the steps that you've taken, what have they shifted in terms of where you're called to be, moving towards. It doesn't ultimately change the overall schema of a first session tarot therapy deep dive, but it gives us additional insight into what might have shifted, because every single choice we make, every single decision we make, every observation, every perception, and ultimately everything we attach meaning to, it alters our life in some way. So having that check-in on a smaller level to see how the changes or the steps she's taken, how they've impacted her trajectory, herself, or the world around her, we can see how we can begin to, take a look at that and work that into this grander sort of plan, if you will, for her and her query and why she initially set up her tarot therapy. So I hope this helps to clarify and gives you an idea of just how powerful, medicinal, and ultimately just so soul aligned and powerful this form of self improvement and self betterment can ultimately assist you in such specific, such detailed ways that really touch on the pulse of your humanity and that really address you on a bone deep level and is tailored ultimately explicitly towards you. So it's not like a typical counseling or therapy session where we're spending a huge amount of time finding out what works for you, what doesn't. We already know what does because the cards are showing us, the cards are telling us. And so it's just simply a matter of heeding the cards' advice and going from there. So if you are really vibing with what you have heard here and what you have witnessed here, you can always go to intuitivealchemy.co/tarot therapy. And I will be sure to link it below, and set up your own session, set up your own opportunity to experience this medicine for yourself. I will talk to you all soon. I'm sending you all my love. Have a great rest of your day, evening, week, wherever you may be.